So today we're going to be creating an S3 bucket. We're going to add an object to the S3 bucket, and then we are going to do some viewing of the object, interact with some permissions of that object, and then enable versioning, and then we'll delete the bucket as well. Cool. So to create an S3 bucket, I assume you guys are all into your console. So that before we can store a object in S3, we need to create a bucket, and a bucket is part of the namespace associated with S3. S3 is a key value storage. So the key is actually going to be like the URL, the namespace that references the object, and then the object itself is the file or the storage associated with that key space. So the first thing we need to do is create the bucket. So we'll go into the console here, and let me just go back to the main. So in case you don't know how to get to S3, we can talk about that really quick. You could click the button up here if you've got that configured. You can look at services and go down to storage and select S3. Or from here, you can just say find a service and type S3. Different options there. We're going to then, so just to kind of show you, I have some existing buckets, but your screen should look like this. I'm just referencing Immersion Day there in terms of the namespace search. Create a bucket, and then let's just confirm the naming protocol associated with that. So here, recommend maybe doing something that has your name, because as I mentioned earlier, the namespace needs to be unique. So within S3, there can't be two buckets that are named the same thing. So here, probably want to use something that uses your name as a unique identifier. So here I would use my last name, and then I would type Immersion Day. Awesome. And then we have this in the North Virginia region. Click Next. There's some configuration options here that we will just leave the default, but as you can see, we can do things like versioning, which we'll talk about later, logging access. We can add tags to the resources and have some object level logging as well. So very powerful in terms of auditing and monitoring of the service here. But we'll just say to the lab. And then here, we're going to initially block all public access to this bucket. So this is a configuration that the console forces upon you to make sure that you're aware that you have the ability to create a public bucket. And this depends on the work case. If you're hosting images for your website, you want to make it public. Or if you're hosting secure financial information, you definitely want to block all public access. And this gives you some abilities to block public access, but also give you the ability to turn off or to prevent additional configurations that might create a backdoor or a configuration on a specific object. This is kind of like a across the board configuration option saying block all public access and don't let any other configurations override that process. So again, very powerful tool here to make sure that your tools are secure, as well as that you don't you shoot yourself in the foot by misconfiguring anything. So we're creating that bucket, and then we have the bucket available for us. There are some naming conventions that you might need to be aware of, since it is the namespace is for all intents and purposes, a website URL. You want to make sure that you're compliant with those. So making sure that it's not an IP address or that it's limited by characters, etc. Okay. And then you also have the ability to do tags. I did not do a tag in the creation for this one, but we can do that very quickly. So in the labs, it talks about creating a tag. It's not used for this, but it does give you the ability to set that there. Setting the permissions, we're going to have that initially blocked for all. And then we're done. So we've created a bucket. Give yourself a round of applause. So now that we have a bucket, what do we want to do? We want to add files. So, and this gives you a great way to do that. Let's just click through this really quick to confirm the configuration here, where we'll create the add files selection. We will use the default permissions, and we'll use the standard storage class associated with that, and then click upload. So we're in the bucket, so I clicked on it. I'll do that again slowly. I kind of went through that quick. So clicking on the bucket brings us to the bucket. So we're in S3, the name of your bucket. We'll click upload, and then we can add files. I have a Stratus 10 ping file that will open. And then we'll click next before we click upload, just to kind of show the, again, the permissions. So you could potentially set permissions here. Unfortunately, these won't work because of the bucket settings don't allow you to do that at this time. But let's go click next. We'll use the standard storage class, but here are the other ones that we referenced as well. And then finally, we can upload. And the file is small, so it got uploaded, and there we have it. So now we want to view that object. Let's say we wanted to view that object into it. So let's just go ahead and do this click, and I'm doing this knowing that it's not going to work because of the configuration. So I click on this, and it gives me an object URL. So this is the URL of this object if I was an end user trying to go to it, the like. So I click on it, and it's saying access denied, which we expected because of the blocking configuration that we had just done. So what we want to do now is go back to the bucket and go ahead and turn off this configuration to block all public access. So we need to do two things. We need to first turn off that the blocking at the bucket level, and then we need to set the permissions for the individual objects. So we'll go ahead and do those two now. So back on the bucket, we see the files there, but then we see a tab here of some different configurations. And here we want to go to permissions. And there are various types of permissions associated with that, but we're with the block public access permission, the first box, and we'll click edit. And edit, and then we'll say block all public access. We'll deselect that and then press save. It's saying, hey, do you really want to do this? And we're saying, of course, we are rebels and we want to do everything insecurely. Or for this case and purpose, it makes sense for our use case. All right, so public setting access access has been updated successfully. So let's go back to overview here and then click on the image. And then here we also need to make the object public. A lot of different ways to do that. I'm going to show you this way that kind of gives you a little bit more details. This is public access, and I want to click everyone, and I want to give everyone access to read it. It gives you a little warning message saying, hey, do you really want to do this? Just a warning message there, and we'll click save, and yes, we do. And now we see that everyone does have read access on that. And clicking on the image again, we have the object URL, and I will try to open this in a different tab. And now we're able to view that object through its S3 URL. It references the name of the bucket and the object name in the URL settings there. All right. So we've retrieved an object from the S3. Again, good job, everybody. So now we want to move that object. Let's show what we can do through the APIs and the like to move files around through different objects. And here, permissions are going to be important, giving the ability to read the file and then write the file and the like. So what we're going to do is repeat the steps to create the first bucket, but here we're not going to make it public or block public access by default. But let me just do this. So you should have something that looks like that. And I'll do a name that's Coulter's IM2. Still in Virginia. Go ahead here. And this is where in the previous step I forgot, you could do something like a tag that says like project, and you can say Immersion Day. Just for reference of that, and you can have various tags for that, but we're not doing that. The next thing is I'm going to go ahead and allow public access, or not necessarily allow public access, but turning off the default blocking of all public access. And then I'm acknowledging that I am doing this because I'm okay with that file being available. All right, and then we'll create the bucket. And then we have IM2. So then here we would go back into the first bucket, the Immersion Day bucket, and then select actions. We could also do it here, but we can select the file or we can go to options here, and this is just using the APIs. The whole console itself, I think this is an important point just to talk about, is that all AWS services are API driven. So the console is just a web UI front end to those APIs, but you can interact with them through scripting, a command line interface, SDKs, and the like within that to make things more systematic and programmatic. As you mature in your adoption of the services. So we'll click on move, and then we'll select to move that to IM2, and we do choose, and we are good with that. And then the file has been moved. It's no longer in this bucket. Go back, and we go to the second bucket, and we see the file there. And that's how you utilize the APIs to do things of moving files within S3. All right, next thing with S3 that we're going to showcase is bucket versioning. This allows you to keep multiple versions of the same file. So let's go ahead and go to that first bucket. Immersion Day, and then we'll look at properties. And here's a bunch of different things. I mentioned the website hosting. This gives you some configurations to have a default like index HTML or error page in public access, logging, encryption, object level logging, important. So we click on versioning and we click enable versioning, save. And then we see now that versioning has been enabled. We go back to the overview, and here I'm going to unfull screen this. And I have a text file that I have called text file 1, and I'll open that right here, and it says text file 1. I'm going to upload this text file to the bucket. Next, next, all good. And here I have the access. I could, allow public access, so I can go ahead and just do that upon upload. This will just make viewing the file easier through the console. And since there's nothing proprietary in my text file, I'm okay with that. We'll use a standard class, and we'll upload that file. Cool, and then let's click on this file. And then here we can see the latest version associated with this. And this is just one version, and that's fine. So let's go ahead and go back to the text file. And click, oh, I've updated this. New version, and then I just click save. And then I go back to my bucket and I upload and I add a file and I choose text file 1, open, or sorry, upload, and then next, I want to make sure it's around public access again. Next, same class, then upload. Now, we look at the file and we see that there's two versions of it, and we can download either the first or second one as we see fit. So let's go ahead and download the second one, save file. And then that's the different one. So that shows you versioning of the file. Or if I wanted to go to downloads. This is the new version. Or if we download the other file, go back to downloads. It probably overrid that one, so. This is the second one because I have a 1 on it with the download, and then this is the original file. There we go. All right. And that is how you do versioning. Next, we'll delete the objects. So we can go ahead and delete the files that we've uploaded and then delete the buckets. You can't delete a S3 bucket that has files in it, but let's go ahead and action, delete. There's there. And then we can click on Immersion Day and click delete that file. It's going to ask you to delete it. Let's make sure I can spell all these things. I didn't even spell Immersion Day right, but that's fine. And then we can delete the second bucket after we delete the file associated with it. IM2, delete. Great, and then your buckets are deleted. And this lab, we created buckets, we configured security with the buckets, we did versioning, we moved an object, understood the namespace, but some other things you could do with S3 is explore. There's some great tutorials how you can host a website entirely on S3. You can create lifecycle policies, and something that we'll look at tomorrow is using IAM with your S3 to limit accessibility within users that you can manage with that.